All right, so it says a car wash charges $8 per car and can wash at most 10 cars in each hour. The amount the car earns in an hour depends on the number of cars washed. What is the domain? So now this is an interesting thing. We've got to figure out what the two parameters are, and then we've got to figure out which one is the domain. So I'm going to over explain this probably, but what is the domain? Well, that's the independent variable, right? That's the independent variable. And we're talking about two parameters, right? We're comparing one thing to another. Okay. Well, what is it that we're comparing? Well, let's look. I have a charge of $8 per car, and I have cars. I have the number of cars, and that affects the money that we're charging, correct? So I have to decide which is the independent variable and which one is the dependent. So I'm really comparing two parameters. One is the cost, right? The money, how much it's going to cost, and the other one is the number of cars. Now, one of them depends on the other. Does the number of cars depend on the cost, or does the cost depend on the cars? We got to think about that. Which one has an effect on the other? The car, yeah, absolutely correct. The cost depends on the number of cars. So this is the dependent variable. So if that one's the dependent variable, what does that tell us about the cars? That's the independent one. So now to define the domain, and now that I've identified which one is independent, oops, I spelled that wrong. The domain then is all the possible values that I can have based on that. So how many cars could I have? Well, I could have 0 cars. I could have 1 car. I could have 2 cars. I could have 3 cars. What's the most cars I can have in 1 hour? 10. So that's it. The domain of this scenario, of this real world situation, is that I could have 0 cars, I could have 1 car, I can have, and then the range is going to be $8 times whatever number of cars I have. Does that make sense?